Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I have an astonishing story about a husband who uncovered his wife's shocking secrets, leading to the end of their marriage. I joined the military when I was just 18 years old and retired shortly after my 39th birthday. But I didn't marry until I left the military. I saw too many men getting burned while I was in, especially if they had kids. These women were taking half of these guys' retirement when they divorced. That scared the hell out of me. After leaving the military, I got a job repairing circuit boards. And my military experience was the main reason I got hired. I did my last stint at Moody Air Force Base in Georgia. Well, one day I was looking at some houses to rent. I called their real estate company and ended up getting shown a house by a woman named Lacey. Lacey showed me the house and I ended up renting it until I found a house I wanted to buy. And that was that. About 4 months later, I attended a party with a good friend, and guess who was there? Lacey. We chatted and mingled the entire night. The chemistry was undeniable. We exchanged numbers, went out a few times, and before I knew it, we were dating. And I moved in with her after my lease was up. After about 2 years of dating, we ended up getting married. Lacey couldn't have kids, and I didn't have any kids of my own. Lacey had some medical issues that prevented her from having kids. Whenever we talked about it, I could see in her face how badly she wanted kids. As time progressed, we settled into a routine. Movie nights and weekend getaways. She would hang out with her girlfriends occasionally, and I would hang out with my friends occasionally. This went on for about 4 years straight. Then boom, her behavior shifted a little bit, but not drastically. She all of a sudden joined the gym. Now, my wife wasn't overweight, but she wasn't built like a brick house at her age. I made a mental note. I didn't question her. I didn't ask her why she joined the gym. Just kept discreet notes on my phone. The next odd thing was when she went out with her girlfriends more often than usual. If I sent her a text, she would almost immediately reply, but that changed. It started taking her hours. And even when she came home after a night out with her girlfriends, she would tell me she didn't hear her phone go off or some other lame excuse. But remember, this was not an issue before. Fast forward 3 months and her behavior starts to get worse. Now her behavior spills over into the bedroom and we never had any issues. Even in our 40s, we were getting it on like rabbits, but that was coming to a screeching halt. One night when we were watching TV, I tried to initiate intimacy, but she pushed me away saying she was not in the mood. All I said was, okay. That threw me for a loop. I immediately got up and went for a drive to gather my thoughts. Lacey didn't say anything, didn't ask where I was going, nothing. I drove around for almost 2 hours before driving back home. When I got home, Lacey wasn't there. No note, nothing. I didn't freak out. I made a note and wrote it down. When Lacey got home, she didn't come to bed. She stayed downstairs and watched TV alone. Didn't feel like getting into an argument at 2 a.m. I had to get up in 6 hours. So I went back to bed. The following day, I got up and went to work. I didn't say anything to Lacey. She was still asleep on the couch. After being at work for about 3 hours, I got a text from Lacey. She apologized for her behavior last night and promised to make it up to me. I don't know what it was, but I didn't feel that her apology was genuine. But I said it was okay. I love you. But in my mind, I knew something was happening with her. That night when I got home, she was all over me. And let's just say she made it up to me. I felt she was trying to keep me from discovering what was happening with her. This behavior of hers went on for about another month before things started to shift again. But this time I researched tracking laws here in Georgia. And what I found was interesting. If the vehicle is registered to me, I could place a tracker on it. But my plan was spoiled because her car is not registered to me. My only other step was to hire someone to follow her. So I started researching private investigators in my area. When I met with the private investigator, I told him my wife has started to act a tad bit off lately. She joined the gym, not wanting to be as intimate as we used to be. I also told him she has been frequently hanging out with her girlfriends. He then asked me, what did I think was wrong? I told the private investigator I had no proof she was doing anything. I gave the private investigator a down payment. I gave him a photo of my wife, all of her friends, and the gym she goes to. Weeks went by without anything from the private investigator, no updates, nothing. And I continued with my wife like nothing was going on. About 3 weeks later, the private investigator asked me to come to his office. What he showed me was devastating. I found out my wife wasn't hanging out with her girlfriends at all. She was attending various house parties with a guy I had never seen before. This is the guy she was cheating with. And the private investigator also said that my wife was seeing another guy, but the first guy didn't know about him either. The investigator caught her cheating in her car and her AP's car. Somehow the investigator got into one of the house parties and even caught her cheating on the back porch with people around. So after receiving the information from the private investigator, I took out my phone and opened up a new bank account right there as I sat in my car. When I got home, Lacey wasn't home. I immediately went into protecting my assets mode. Next, I removed her from 2 credit cards that she was an authorized user on. I didn't need them and I hardly ever used them. At about 6:30ish p.m., Lacey came home and the strangest thing happened. She walked right past me, but she had the scent of a man's cologne on her. I just looked at her and shook my head. She went to the bathroom to take a shower, but she never came back out of the bedroom. I slept on the couch that night. When I woke up the next day, she was already gone. I called my boss and told him I needed a day off. That day, I moved all of my stuff out of the house. I didn't care about the house, it was hers. All I wanted was my things. I stayed at a buddy's house until I got another place. Well, when my wife got home, she asked where I was. She only sent one text, she never called. I never went back to the house. My wife was served with divorce papers about a month later. We had only been married 6 years. Seeing that divorce was inevitable, people were asking what was going on since they saw that I changed my Facebook profile status. I simply made a Facebook post of some pictures of my wife and the other men she was with, and simply said, "This is why I am getting divorced." Needless to say, I received a little backlash for it, but I really didn't give a shit. Those folks can kiss my ass. She cheated and now she must face the consequences. About 2 months later, we had our divorce hearing and it was pretty much a wash. I didn't get alimony and I wasn't trying to. I had my military retirement and I was also working. We both were allowed to keep our belongings. I didn't have anything else in the house. I was out, but I found out that one of my wife's APs was married. I contacted his wife and told her everything. She wanted proof I wasn't lying. So I promptly asked to meet her and show her. Well, we met at a diner next to her job and I gave her a folder with my number and photos in it. And I left. About 2 months later, my ex-wife's AP's wife notified me and told me she was filing for divorce. Then the strangest thing happened. One of my ex-wife's friends came forward and told me that she was sorry that she didn't tell me sooner that my ex-wife was cheating. All I asked her was how long did she know. She said she knew for at least 2 years that my wife was cheating on me. I let out a big sigh and hung up the phone. Anyway, I have lurked on Reddit forums and didn't want to post my story there. Thank you, Tony, for allowing me to share my story. Well, I agree with OP. For one, not wanting to get married while in the military was probably a good move. Why he gets to keep his retirement and doesn't have to share it with his cheating wife. The fact that he didn't say anything to his wife was absolutely brilliant. He didn't get mad. He didn't yell, didn't resort to violence. He spent money to get his evidence and divorced her. Until next time. If you found this story gripping, please like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible tales. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Greetings, viewers. Today, we have an unbelievable story that will shock you to your core. Prepare to be captivated as we unravel the truth behind a wife's secret life. Let's dive in. It's hard to recognize my life looking back on it. I'd always thought it would be a normal small-town dream. Wife, 2 kids, dog, and a little house. And I was well on my way to securing that little slice of Americana for myself. But despite being the best contractor in the county, the life I'd built came tumbling down one day when I found out what my wife's extra shifts really were. I'd always been proud of my wife long before the pandemic brought everything to a screeching halt. I known the work that being in the healthcare field was like running a perpetual gauntlet, one covered in someone else's vomit. Melissa spent long hours taking care of elderly dementia patients in a nursing home as a CNA early in her career, coming home in tears at the state of the facility and the lack of help. Then, when she became an RN, she was able to move on to greener pastures. First up, our local emergency room. Despite her small frame and bubbly demeanor, my wife had always been one hell of a daredevil. She loved the heart-bursting adrenaline of roller coasters, and she drove far faster than even I dare to. That made her a great fit for the ER, where you had to know how to handle your adrenaline and still act. Finally, her career landed her on the nursing career version of free parking. She became a flight nurse. For the first few months, her social media was full of posts showing her next to the helicopter in her full gear, looking tiny next to the man who she said was a pilot. She informed me it got a lot of attention from our friends. Social media was never my thing, so I took her at her word. As for me, I'd never done anything much. Melissa was my greatest accomplishment in life. Just like her, I'd headed off to college just after graduation. Unlike her, I'd been more interested in making things than helping people. A career as an engineer was what I'd been pursuing when I met her. Within 2 months, we were engaged and planning our life together, and my studies simply gave way to her own. Her job saved lives. After all, my career path wasn't anything quite so noble, so I fell back on my high school job, working construction in a business owned by a friend's father. The money wasn't much, but it was enough to keep us alive while Melissa finished her education. Even when she was working while at college, it was a pittance. My paycheck and sweat ensured she ate, got to class, and had a roof over her head. She said one day, through tears, as I surprised her with the money, she'd been short to cover her books one semester. I told her, "You will make it through, I promise." Then I kissed her on the forehead. She didn't need to know. I skipped lunch every day for the last 2 months to scrounge the money up. By the time she made it to the big leagues of nursing, life wasn't quite so unsteady. We'd made it through the hard part. Now she was practically raking in the money. For the first time in our lives, it felt like we could relax and enjoy ourselves a little. I started taking more holidays off, hosting more barbecues for our friends, even went to an NFL game once or twice. And her, girls' night out, girls' night in, spa days, she was gorgeous. With as much time and cash as she spent at the salon and the mall, you'd hope so. But why should I care? She was bringing home the dough, and I was reaping the rewards. There was a downside, though. I began to feel lonely. With all of her time at work, and all of the time she spent focusing on herself, she had hardly any time left for me. Of course, she deserved pampering. After all of those hours being selfless, helping her patients in every place she worked, but it didn't make the feeling any better. I loved my wife and wanted her desperately every minute of every day. And I couldn't seem to get her to sit still long enough to let me show her how much I adored her. Finally, I knew what needed to be done, knew exactly what would really catch her eye. Being young and paying for our own wedding, a honeymoon hadn't been a possibility. It had saddened Melissa to no end, and no groom likes to see his bride looking down on her wedding day. So, I made a promise to her that one day I'd take her wherever she wanted to go in the entire world. Whatever she wanted, I'd make it happen. And I had always intended to keep that promise. For our 5th anniversary, I kept that promise. I'm not too manly to say the week wasn't magical. Spending 7 days with the most beautiful woman in the world, seeing her body bronze in the sun, and become dewy against the sheets. It's something anyone would be over and she was as happy about it as I was. The glow in her eyes told the whole story. It felt like we were brought out of stasis. We'd entered upon saying, "I do," and that we were newlyweds all over again. There was no getting enough of each other. We made love for hours, every night, every day. Even today, I don't think the memory of that vacation will ever leave me. Now, much more bitter than before. It's still something I'd enjoyed so long. I know it would never leave me. When we got home, I carried my wife, still as beautiful as the day I married her, over the threshold. It was the first time I'd felt good enough about myself as a husband to do so. How could things have gone so badly wrong? The first thing that dented this haven we created was the while other couples were stuck at home together, whether fighting or, well, I was stuck at home by myself. Melissa seemed to be working constantly. When she came home, she'd have indentures from the PPA on her skin. I tried to kiss her, rub the marks to make the pain from them go away, but she'd usually push me aside. I understood. I really did. She was working an exhausting schedule and trying to fight a battle against an enemy that she couldn't even see. What kind of jackass husband would put sex above something like that? So, I focused my love on being accepting of her and of doing my best to support her in any way I could. She'd come home to a hot meal and a strong drink. No matter what time it was, when she returned, whatever she wanted, I had it before she could get the sentence out. Her feet hurt. No worries, babe. I'll carry you to the tub so you can soak. And I didn't ask anything in return. Showing love to healthcare workers wasn't just a social movement to me. It was something I was throwing myself into with the woman I loved as the recipient. But even as things seemed to be slowing down, she started staying away more and more. I don't want you to catch COVID, she told me one day, after she spent a full week in a hotel room near her workplace. Your family's health history isn't great. Your grandma's got emphysema, and you're the only one that can go out and about without possibly spreading it. She promised me things will be back to normal, and we will possibly go away again. I wouldn't realize until hours later that neither of us had said I love you. Not once in the entire conversation. It made me feel like a failure of a husband. After all, she was my wife, my life, and I loved her dearly. But something inside me didn't sit right. That night, I hardly slept, even as I tried to drown that feeling in my gut in cheap fear. Not long after that hit, I got another one. I lost my job. The owner felt horrible as he'd known me since I was a kid. We're letting everyone go for now, he said, everyone but me and the family. It's all I can afford. And I don't know how much longer that'll last. As soon as everything's back to normal, I will hire you again. And if you find some other job in between and you don't want to leave it, you will get no hard feelings from me. If you come back, I'll make it up to you. I'll give you a promotion and a raise. But for now, I gotta let you go. I took my marching papers along with a glowing reference and a promise not to fight unemployment and came home early to an empty house and an absent wife. This was the time when the loneliness was the worst. I called and called, trying to get a hold of her somehow, if for nothing but our budget. She had to know that I just lost the only job I'd ever had and the income that had helped her rise to where she was today. The phone would ring and ring and ring, but I never got an answer. I must have texted her dozens of times, nothing, but I assumed she was busy with work and there was nothing more noble than working extra shifts at a hospital during a pandemic. Finally, 2 days after getting the axe, she answered. The sympathy I expected, it was clear I wouldn't find it with her. Why? How could you let this happen? She said, sounding angrier than I'd ever heard her before. She berated me, told me that she had no intention of supporting a spouse who didn't work. It was an ugly side I've never seen of her before. This was North Carolina, and we'd both gotten a heaping dose of old-fashioned values just from living in the place, but I'd always thought of her as my partner in life. And my partner had just left me feeling alone, uncared for, and disgusted. After that, the next weeks were a blur. I'm not proud to admit that I spent most of the time drunk. Doing anything else felt like moving a mountain. I just wanted to wilt, to wallow in the sorrow that my happy life and marriage had become. Melissa and I didn't talk much. I only saw her once a week, sometimes less. We slept together once. She did seem nicer, more caring, even apologizing for her outburst, but that feeling in the pit of my stomach was back and it wasn't leaving. During one of our phone calls when she answered, I could have sworn I heard a man's voice. It was low, a bit gruff, and I couldn't make out what he'd been cut off from saying. The tone, though, unmistakable. Asking Melissa about it made her laugh. She said, you just heard the TV. I'm catching up on some shows. I haven't had a chance to watch in a while. Then I asked, why did it stop? Because I paused it to talk to you. She stopped for a moment. What are you trying to say? Suddenly feeling foolish, I didn't tell the truth. I brushed the question off and tried to talk to her as though nothing was wrong. Something was wrong, though. Very wrong. I'd hear her answer the phone out of breath. It would be because she just hurried back to the hotel to rest her feet. But never again did I hear that voice over the phone, at least. One day, when I had run out of beer to drink and pity to consume me, I decided something had to change. I knew my wife was off work. Now COVID be damned. I was going to pick up flowers, put on something that wasn't 3 days worn, and I was going to go see my wife. She'll be so surprised. I thought I had no idea how right that would be and how wrong at the same time. I had always known where she was staying while she didn't like me to visit and had told me of her own accord. I put my foot down. I was going to know where my wife was spending her nights. If only so I know where she was. If something happened, they were across town, close to the hospital she worked out of. It's why she said she had chosen them. At the front desk, I stopped. A woman was working there, red-headed, a bit slim, but with green eyes that struck me for a moment, feeling a moment of disgust with myself. I smiled in a friendly way. It took some smooth talking, but I got a key card for her room. Her booking with my credit card helped with that. That was exactly what I wanted. I didn't want her to have the chance to turn me away. Here I was dressed in my Sunday best and carrying a bouquet of lilies, her favorite flower, and a bottle of rose wine, her favorite drink. I was ready for a special night. I walked into a nightmare. Upon opening the door, I didn't really comprehend what it was at first. The lights were on, and I saw the bed unmade. Then I saw skin. Then I saw red. I was stunned, which is lucky, I suppose. Otherwise, I might be in prison now, but it was clear what was happening. My wife, my Melissa, being intimate with another man, I felt ill. I felt something beyond anger. By now she noticed me. She was shrieking, yelling about something, then sobbing. The man was putting clothes on. It was such a blur. Somehow I ended up in the foyer of the hotel, sobbing, heartbroken, and barely conscious with grief over my lost marriage. It was the receptionist that had given me the key that finally helped. A hand was rubbing my back. That contact had more intimacy than anything Melissa had given me in months. My thoughts began to cool. I began to calm down. "You seem like a good man," she was saying. "You don't deserve someone like her. Don't let her do this to you. It's going to be all right." I asked her what she meant, and the truth came out. My wife hadn't been working so many extra shifts. In fact, she'd worked little more than I had. A steady 40-hour work week. All that time, she had been sleeping with other men. The receptionist hadn't kept careful track, but knew it was more than one. I didn't go home. I went to my friend's house, the one whose father had given me my job. He drank with me and let me crash on his couch until I felt like coming home. That took 2 days. There was one stop made between his house and mine. As it turned out, she was there trying to explain, wanting to save our marriage after putting nothing towards it, then shattering it with her infidelity. I didn't want that. How could I? I'd never see her as my Melissa again. She couldn't be my wife anymore. Not after what I'd seen, but I decided to get the truth out of her, and I could use this to do it. "Tell me," I said, my voice so grave, I could hardly recognize it. "Tell me how many, and don't lie and say that was the only one." Eyes watery. She looked down, ashamed, I supposed, at her behavior. Oddly, I found that I didn't care about it. I was completely detached. 3. She told me the whole story, skipping no details. At every point in her career, she found somebody to screw behind my back while I was slaving away in the summer sun. She was studying with the fellow nursing student while in school. She didn't pull extra shifts at the nursing home. A cook there had caught her eye. There was nobody after our trip. She said fervently, nobody, just you until the man she'd been caught with, the pilot she worked with. Of course. Suddenly, she was wiping her face. "Please, please forgive me. I'm so sorry," she repeated in stuttering litany. "Look, I got you something. It's tickets for that Hawaii vacation." And I interrupted her. "I got you something too." A look of fear came over her face. Melissa didn't answer. The only reply I had was handing out a packet of divorce papers. The divorce wasn't terribly lengthy, for about a month or so. It seemed like Melissa was going to push to stay together. I'd heard that her pilot had gotten into trouble with his own wife for sleeping with mine. She decided to stay, but he was to have nothing with Melissa, with the other lovers long in the rear view mirror that left her alone as I'd been. I wasn't alone anymore. I was living my life and getting on with it. Work hadn't hired me back, but I'd been building my reputation as a contractor. The pay was small as of now, but quickly growing. My buddy didn't mind me staying in his garage apartment until I found something a bit better. Best of all, I'd gotten a pretty redhead's number from the hotel. Her name is Jean. We've had dinner 3 times now. I've never had to call her back more than twice. As for Melissa, there's something we both learned about our state law. When adultery is the cause of the divorce, it can be used to determine certain aspects of the split. Things like alimony. The judge was horrified by Melissa's behavior and took into account everything I'd done to help her and how my now ex had betrayed me. That account turned out to mean a rather hefty sum of alimony every month for a very, very long time. The first night after the divorce was complete, Jean and I made love. After all, I'm not a cheater, and she's not looking for any extra shifts. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and subscribe for more
Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I have an intense story about a husband who uncovered his wife's shocking affair with her boss, and how he exposed the truth. My name is Mike, I'm 39, and this is the story of my wife Jennifer, she's 40, getting caught cheating with her senior boss. My wife was always very social, frequently going out with her friends and coworkers. We both have stable corporate jobs. She works in marketing at a fast-paced marketing firm downtown and teaches evening yoga classes at a boutique studio a few nights a week. I'm an accountant at a prestigious law firm and work long hours there. I started at the firm right out of college when I was 22 and have gradually worked my way up over the past 6 years. Jennifer and I met right after graduating from different colleges and starting our careers in the city. One Friday night, I was out with friends at a trendy bar downtown after a long week at the office. My college friends were visiting town, so we were catching up over some beers. At the bar, I noticed an attractive woman around my age laughing with her friends. I overheard them congratulating her on a promotion at work. She had long, straight brown hair and wore stylish business casual clothes. I was drawn to her energy and good looks. We made eye contact a few times across the bar. Eventually, I approached her, complimented her dress, and initiated a conversation. It turns out her name was Jennifer, and she had just started working at a marketing firm downtown after graduating the same year as me. Despite the long hours, she had studied communications in college and was excited about this new job opportunity. Jennifer was easy to talk to, and we discovered we had a lot in common, like our passion for trying new restaurants and our love of travel. After chatting for over an hour, I got her number and we planned to meet next weekend. From our first date, it was clear we had chemistry. We could talk and laugh effortlessly for hours. We both wanted to take things slow and properly get to know each other before rushing into a label. After about 6 months of dating exclusively, I knew Jennifer was special. After 1 year of dating, I surprised her with a weekend getaway to a charming bed and breakfast a couple of hours outside the city. While there, I took her out to a candlelit dinner and proposed. I'll never forget the surprise and joy on her face as she said yes. We had a year-long engagement as we planned our dream wedding. Her parents were very traditional and wanted to invite the extended family, even though we didn't know some guests well. They also generously offered to pay for the entire wedding as they come from old money, while my family is middle class. I sometimes felt awkward about the differences in our upbringings, but Jennifer always assured me it didn't matter. She loved me for me. The wedding day finally arrived on a crisp fall Sunday. Jennifer wore an exquisite lace gown and looked like a princess. We exchanged heartfelt vows in a beautiful cathedral ceremony, then danced joyfully with our friends and family at the elegant reception her parents organized. We jetted off the next day to an all-inclusive resort in the Jamaican Islands for a 2-week honeymoon. Another gift from her parents. It was heavily relaxing on sandy beaches with no work or life stresses, just focusing on each other. Once we returned to real life, we settled into a comfortable newlywed routine. I would wake up early to go to the office, while Jennifer left for her corporate marketing job a bit later. We both worked long hours but tried to make time for date nights on the weekends, going to new exotic restaurants or plays downtown. Jennifer also taught yoga classes at night to bring in some extra income. Since teaching was her passion, she would head to the studio after work, 2 to 3 evenings a week, while I often worked late at the office. I also played on a local recreational soccer team with my college buddies, which kept me active and helped me wind down from corporate life. Jennifer was never into sports but would cheer me on from the sidelines. After about 2 years of marriage, Jennifer mentioned wanting to have kids soon. Her biological clock was ticking, and she dreamed of starting a family. Although I wanted kids someday, I asked if we could wait just a couple more years. I was up for a promotion at my firm soon, which would require even longer hours for a while. We should also enjoy a couple of years of married life before taking on parenthood. Jennifer was disappointed. I reluctantly agreed to wait. Looking back, the desire for motherhood and her career ambitions fueled what happened next. Our marriage carried on contently for a couple more years. Then one day, I started noticing subtle changes in Jennifer's behavior. Nothing huge or alarming, but just little things that felt off. For one, she suddenly joined an intense cycling studio downtown and started riding every morning before work. Jennifer enjoyed yoga, but had never been into strenuous exercise classes before. When I asked about her newfound passion for cycling, she just said she wanted to get in shape, and her coworker friends were going too. I also observed Jennifer staying out later with coworkers more frequently for dinner or happy hour drinks after work. When I would text her asking when she'd be home, sometimes she wouldn't respond for hours, saying she left her phone in her purse and didn't hear it. However, being attached to her phone hadn't ever been an issue before. Over the next couple of months, Jennifer's behavior continued morphing in subtle but strange ways. We were cuddling on the couch watching a romantic movie one night. I started kissing her neck and caressing her leg, hoping to initiate intimacy, but she pushed me away, saying she wasn't feeling well. She had a headache. I was surprised and hurt by the rejection, but tried not to overthink it. She had headaches before, but it never stopped us from getting busy. Another time, she texted she would be home an hour later than planned because of an impromptu work happy hour. When she walked in, I could smell alcohol on her breath, more than one drink after work. She was stumbling a little. She got defensive when I pointed this out, saying I didn't trust her judgment. I tried gently bringing up my concerns about her recent distance and change in priorities, but Jennifer insisted everything was fine and I was being paranoid. But deep in my gut, I sensed something more was happening behind the scenes. After discussing the situation with a close friend, he convinced me it was time to dig deeper rather than ignore the red flags as much as I didn't want to admit it. I realized I needed to look into hiring a private investigator. After researching, I found an investigator who was an ex-cop. I met with the private investigator and explained I had no hard proof of wrongdoing, but a lot of puzzling behavioral changes in my wife over the past few months. I just wanted help finding the truth so I could take appropriate action. The private investigator promised discretion and apologized. This is always a challenging position to be in. The next day, he assigned someone to start tailing Jennifer for 2 weeks, following wherever she went after work and on weekends instead of home to me. About 10 days into the investigation, the truth finally came out. The investigator uncovered that Jennifer was having an affair with a senior manager at her company. After work, Jennifer would go to his fancy condo downtown, telling me she was staying late at the office or meeting friends for dinner. The investigator eventually caught them kissing goodbye in the man's car one night before he dropped Jennifer off a block from our condo. She would then return home to keep up the charade of being my faithful wife. My heart sank as the private investigator presented photographic evidence of the betrayal. Although I had expected something was off, the confirmation still hit me like a ton of bricks. However, I knew I had to remain focused to protect myself during the inevitable divorce. The investigator commended me for staying calm and collected, despite the shocking discovery about my wife's unfaithfulness. First, per the private investigator's advice, I discreetly opened a new personal bank account and transferred precisely half of our joint savings into it. In case Jennifer tried cleaning out the account, then I packed a small suitcase and checked into a long-term hotel suite without Jennifer knowing. It was painful being in that condo. I needed space to process my swirling emotions. When Jennifer finally texted that evening asking where I was, I simply responded that I had left and would have divorce papers drawn up soon. She immediately called me crying, asking if we could discuss things, insisting it was all a colossal mistake, but I could barely listen, overwhelmed with anger and sorrow at her betrayal. I told her my lawyer would be in touch and hung up while she was still tearfully pleading for another chance. Over the next few weeks, I worked closely with my attorney to file for divorce swiftly on the grounds of adultery. Utilizing the private investigator's extensive evidence, Jennifer's wealthy family tried to offer hush money to keep the affair under wraps. A messy divorce scandal would look bad for their pristine reputation, but I refused to cover up the deceit for their sake. After Jennifer utterly shattered my trust, this was her mistake to own, not mine to hide. As news spread about our impending divorce, several of Jennifer's friends who knew about the affair apologized for not telling me sooner. They were scared to rock the boat, but admitted feeling guilty watching me be betrayed. I thanked them for their honesty when it mattered most. Despite her family's aggressive lawyers trying to intervene, the divorce proceedings were fairly quick and amicable. Jennifer realized there was no salvaging a relationship without trust. She didn't contest any terms I proposed to the court. We divided our finances and possessions evenly. I kept the downtown condo we bought, which I could afford alone, while she moved back home with her parents until she found a new place. I was devastated when Jennifer first cheated, but we can move on separately now. I've reconnected with old friends, hit the gym to reduce stress, and even started casually dating again. Jennifer's affair with the older manager quickly fell apart once the excitement of sneaking around was gone. Last I heard, she regretted everything and blamed her behavior on turning 30, feeling her biological clock ticking. But that's no excuse for utterly betraying your spouse's trust. I'll find love again with someone who shares my values when right. Though this divorce was painful, it was a wake-up call in some ways. I realize now I can't just work nonstop and expect marriage to flourish without nurturing intimacy. I need to refocus on my health and make time for shared activities as a couple. Communication and trust are so vital. Everything happens for a reason. Despite my heartbreak, I'm proud of keeping my composure and looking out for myself during the divorce. The future will still be bright. I'm excited to see what life brings next, and to keep evolving into my best self. If you found this story gripping, please like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible tales. And don't forget to hit the notification bell, so you never miss an update.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I have a story that will leave you speechless. It's about my fiancée cheating the day before our wedding and her desperate attempts to win me back. You won't believe what happened next. My fiancé was caught cheating the day before our wedding. I am back with an update about my fiancée cheating on me the day before our wedding. As you know, she was cheating on me with an old boyfriend who has since passed away from a drug overdose. I accompanied her to the funeral. I know I shouldn't have, but I thought it was just the right thing to do. By no means. I plan on getting back with her, but I just figured I was helping someone in need. After I attended the funeral with her, we sort of went our separate ways. I didn't talk to her at all for about 3 weeks after the funeral. While I was at work one day, I get a text from Margaret asking, "Can we meet for dinner?" Her treat. I said, "Margaret, I have some work to do later. I don't think it's a good idea." She begs and pleads. I said, "Okay, I will text you later." At this point, I am perplexed as to why she wants to meet so badly. I think she is going to try and get back with me. Later that night, when we meet at a restaurant for dinner, Margaret starts crying over her food. Then, out of nowhere, she blurts out, "I love you. And I miss you." She goes on saying how sorry she was for what she did and how she hurt me. I told her, "Why are you asking me? I can't. I am still furious at what you did." I also told her, I can't trust her. It will never be like it was. She then asked, what could she do to regain my trust? I simply told her nothing, because I am over you. She then put her head down and started crying a little. Again, I simply told her that you broke my trust and the timing, Margaret, the timing. I had no idea she was going to take it this hard. I then asked her, what would she do if she were in my shoes? I would forgive you. She said, without hesitation. I said, Margaret is not that easy for me. As the night goes on, she is still trying to convince me to give her another chance, despite me telling her no. Margaret then tells me she would do anything to regain my trust and that she is sorry for what happened. I am not sure how to feel about all of this. What is her motivation to try and get back with me? This has been a lot to process, and it's hard because part of me still cares for her. But at the same time, if I give her another chance, there is a strong chance that she will cheat again. I am not sure how to feel. I don't know if I should just let her go or give her the opportunity of proving herself. We wrap up our dinner date. I thanked her for dinner. She comes over to me and gives me a hug and walks away with tears. After the dinner date, a lot is going through my mind. The next day I call my dad and ask him, can we meet for lunch? He was surprised at first, but he said, sure, let's have lunch. So, as lunchtime comes around, I meet my dad at a restaurant nearby. He asked me, is everything okay? I said, yes. I then tell him that Margaret and I met for dinner last night. He said, why does she want to meet you for dinner? I said, I don't know, but she wants me to give her another chance. I asked my dad, what would he do? He said, do you still love her? I told him that no matter what we have been through in the past and how much she hurt me, there was a part of me that loved her. He asked, "Do you want to give her another chance to prove herself or just let her go?" He also added, "You don't want to spend your life wondering about what if." My dad was right. I don't want to spend the rest of my life thinking, what if? I thank my dad for having lunch with me. Then I went back to work. As I finished up my workday, I drive home, and when I pull up, Margaret is at my door. I am thinking to myself, what is she doing here? I asked Margaret, why are you here? She says, I can't give up. Please give me another chance. I said, Margaret, I can't. It would not be in my best interest to give you another chance. She says, why? I say to her, you know why. We just went over this last night at dinner. As I am talking to her, I unlocked the door to my house and walk in. Margaret is right behind me, still pleading. We get into the living room and then she tells me she still loves me and just can't give up so easily. She again asked me, what can she do to regain my trust? I finally yelled at her and tell her, you can't. You will never be able to regain my trust. At that point, she went silent, dropped her head and started crying. She walks out and leaves. After that, I didn't hear from Margaret for 2 weeks. I figured she got the message when I yelled at her. I was wrong. I get home from work one day, there is a knock at my door. I asked, who is it? The voice on the other side of the door, it's Margaret. Please, can we talk? She says. I open the door. Margaret is on her knees with their hands interlaced, like she is praying. I said, what are you doing? Get up. Why are you here? She says to me, please consider giving me another chance. I said, Margaret, why do you keep asking? She says, you know, I love you and don't want to miss the opportunity to have a great future together. I know what I did was wrong, but please give me the opportunity to prove to you that you can trust me. I looked at her like she was crazy. I said, Margaret, you killed that chance by cheating. Let me say this again. I am not getting back together with you. 1, you need to stop coming to my home. 2, I have made my mind up. There is nothing you can say or do to make me change my mind. She then bows her head, then looks up again and said, that's it? I said, yes, that's it. She then turns and walks away, totally dejected. After that, I never saw Margaret again. The last I heard, she was still living at her parents' and even dating some guy that a couple of people said he is a bum. One day I am at work. I get a text from Margaret saying she misses me and still loves me, even though I don't want to be with her. I simply read it and deleted it. A couple more days go by and a friend of mine is having a party and invites me. I go with my friends and I see Margaret there. She comes up to me and says she wants to talk, but I ignore her completely. Later that night on the way home from the party, a few of us were driving back when we saw Margaret's car parked at an empty mall parking lot. I said, hey, that's Margaret's car, so we drive up. And as we get closer, we all witnessed her having sex with some guy. We surprised them and Margaret spots me looking at her. I just shook my head and realized at that moment, I made the right decision by not letting her back into my life. I looked at her and smiled and gave her a thumbs up. Needless to say, after seeing Margaret with that guy was definitely closure for me. I had already made my mind up that I was not getting back together with her. But after that, my decision was solidified. Word had got out from some of my friends on what we saw, but that was the extent of it. Weeks go by, and some of our mutual friends tell me they haven't seen or heard from Margaret since then. One day, I get a call from Margaret's mom saying that Margaret is moving out of state with her new boyfriend. I was surprised at the call, but her mom wanted to see how I was since all of the cheating came out. She told me she thought what her daughter did was horrible and she wished me the best. We talked for a few more minutes and then hang up. My workday continues. Then suddenly, Margaret walks into my office. I said, what are you doing here? She says she wanted to drop by and see me one last time. And she was in the area. She said, I wanted to drop by and give you this letter. She puts the letter on my desk and walks out. After she leaves, I am sitting there surprised. She is still going through all of this trouble, and she has a new boyfriend. I pick up the letter and just stare at it. I am debating whether I should open it or not. What will it accomplish by me reading it? Probably nothing. So, I reached over my desk and put the letter in the shredder. I figured there's nothing for me to read or to consider. Margaret is past tense as far as I am concerned. I have the closure I need to move forward and not look back. I am proud of myself for sticking to my decision. As you can see, I am in a much better place now. It is so nice to be able to wake up, not wondering if she would cheat on me again or what new lies she has come up with this time. I don't have to worry about what if. I am free. I can move on with my life without any guilt that I made the right decision, especially thanks to my dad for giving me sound advice. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon to get notified about our latest dramatic tales. And drop a comment below with your thoughts on what you would do in my situation. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Mark. I hope you all are having a wonderful day or evening. In today's story, Opie found out his wife cheated on him with a guy she met at a bar and now claims that she wants to have kids with him. Now, let's get into today's story to find out what happened. I, 37 male, have been in a relationship with my wife, 35, for 15 years and married for 5. We have 2 children, ages 3 and 1. On December 13th of last year, she met the AP at a bar about 2 blocks from our apartment. She had been in a state of depression for a while preceding this and was self-medicating with heavy alcohol abuse. She had gone to the bar for a drink and met the AP. They struck up a conversation. He listened to her troubles and they exchanged phone numbers. He gave her some weed. She was too drunk and high to drive the 2 blocks back to our apartment, so she called me. I had been calling her fairly frantically all evening as she had failed to pick up the kids from daycare and had effectively vanished. She was so far gone on the phone that she had to ask the AP standing next to her, as she called me, where she was so I could come and pick her up. When she finally sobered up, she simply said that the AP had been a friendly person who had been concerned when she had drunk too much. The day she received some texts from him, including a couple telling her that she should come to his apartment and that he was waiting for her. He also began making calls to her phone. After a few ring-throughs with her agreements, I answered the phone myself and told him that she was married and that he should F off. He said that he was just calling to make sure she was okay, since she had been in a bad way the day before. I gave my wife the phone and she told him that she was okay and to stop calling. For the next week, I thought that was the end of things with him. On December 20th, we went with the kids to visit my in-laws for Christmas. On the 23rd, D-Day 2, my wife's parents went out to finish Christmas shopping. While they were out, I heard my wife talking to someone on the phone. My 3-year-old son, our 3-year-old, was in the room with her and she was having my son say hi to whoever she was speaking to. I asked her who it was and she said she was talking to one of her friends from grad school. Something about the situation did not sit quite right with me. So when she went to put our son to bed, I found her phone and sure enough, the call had been to the AP. And there was a history of texts from the 13th to that evening, with some obvious gaps where messages had been deleted. The most recent conversation was about our kids, including some photos of our children, and ended with the AP stating how much he would like my wife to have his babies. I confronted her immediately and she burst into tears and asked me to please not leave her. What has followed has been 2 months of lies and false promises to end things. She has told me that she wants to be reconciled and then gone right back to the affair. She pays verbal homage to go marital counseling, but only as a tactic to delay and to continue with. She has shocked me with the casualness with which she can lie to my face. She has continued her behavior up until this very evening as I write this. She is with him at his house right now. This week, I'm going to be talking to a lawyer and initiating a divorce. It's astounding how quickly and how thoughtlessly she has discarded our lives together. I'm ashamed to have spent so much of my life with her. If it weren't for our kids, who I love with all my heart, I would count all 15 years with her as an utter waste. OP, I'm so sorry. You're in the middle of all this right now. Please keep in mind one thing. You can be a super dad with or without your wife. You continue to be there for your kids and your connection will grow stronger. As for the AP and your wife, let them live their fake fantasy. You are better than them both combined. The insincerity of their relationship will come to haunt them. She will come back, but you will be gone, living and being a great dad. Good luck. Now, let's get into today's second story. I've been married to my wife for a little over a year now. We've been together for almost 13 years. We have two children, ages 2 and 6, and we have a problem. My wife always seemed to be a happy woman, the life of the party, and a social beast. But she changed in the past few years. Her first pregnancy was really tough on her, and while giving birth to her oldest daughter, she developed a trauma. She got into therapy again and slowly rebuilt her positive flow, or so I thought. During these times, I noticed that she stopped talking to me about her negative thoughts if I admitted how much she hurt me with them. We had a second girl, and this time she did feel it, for about 3 or 4 months. Then the shame hit her that she hadn't felt this with our oldest girl. And in secret, she started having dark thoughts again. It turned out that her thoughts of suicide went from unwanted to welcome. We got married at the end of 2016, and it turns out that her feelings during that period were darker than ever. Before our marriage, she had met a man, a tattoo artist who was 15 years older and was working on her tattoo. Something to remember her dark period and her strength, and was married himself. They started an affair 2 weeks after our marriage and met in secret until I caught her this January. While digging through her lies as she didn't want to tell me the whole truth, I found out that she had been in contact with 3 other men. She had sexed with two, but only had deep and meaningful conversations with the last one. The weeks after that, she confessed to me that she had been very suicidal and that her meetings with that man felt like she could escape her reality and live in a bubble for a few hours. Nobody but me knew of her dark thoughts, and she had hidden her darkest drives even from me. We had a ton of arguments, but she told me she didn't want to lose me, and that she loved me, that she made a mistake, and that she was afraid that she was broken beyond repair. She had been seeing a therapist because she was suffering from burnout, but she had only told her 10% of the truth. When I demanded she tell the therapist everything, they told her that the case was too hard for her kind of therapy. At the time, the verdict was still a postnatal depression that devolved into PTSD. A few weeks ago, she started with another clinic, and they quickly stated that the verdict was wrong. PTSD didn't fit because she didn't have trauma and because her thoughts were welcome and not intrusive. She felt at peace when browsing online for ways to kill herself or deciding what music should be played at her funeral. Currently, the verdict is dysthymic depression, and she'll be starting treatment soon. But now for the hard part. We spent 1.5 months trying to get past the fact that she had an affair, and I was slowly giving it a place that didn't cause pain all the time. The betrayal was painful, especially because she was always the one who crucified people who did this, and who started accusing me of having an affair the past year. I slowly got into a spot where I could manage, but 2 weeks ago, I confronted her with the fact that she had only shown remorse 2 times. That I felt as if I was fighting harder for this than her. That I felt as if I was the only one who had cheated and who was suffering, while she was being angry and defensive 24/7. She told me she felt it and that she would try. But 30 minutes later, she called me upstairs and told me it was over. That she loved me and the kids, but that her feelings were dead. Her trust was gone. I know the stress of being caught, and having to hear that she has dysthymic depression is causing her to block her emotions, to go on the offense instead of admitting to what she did. But it feels as if she's making a decision while being in her darkest place, as remote from her true feelings as possible. She has agreed to go to couples counseling. We have our first session tomorrow, but I'm really looking for advice on how to handle her depression. And she has already stated that she wants it to work out with all her heart, but currently has no faith that it will help. She's dead inside. When talking to other people, she wants to let the whole world know what she did to crucify herself. She keeps stating that there are two sides to the story. And it's no excuse, but I felt so alone, thereby forgetting that I was just as alone as her in the relationship. And when I talk to other people about what happened, I'm mostly focusing on my mistakes, not hers. It feels as if she blames me for what she did, for what she became. I'm not the kind of person who likes to be on the wrong end of the stick, but I've quickly found out these past weeks that if I confront her or show too much anger, she withdraws and pushes me away or gets angry. I know she's not without feelings. During the time we spent apart would be crying, taking long walks, and mentally unstable. She presents herself for what she did to me, and her children for the pain she caused us, and hates what she's become. So how on earth do I handle her depression and adultery? Show her that I love her and that I care, without being a burden or giving her the feeling that I'm pushing her. We've been living apart these past 2 weeks, and she keeps telling me that she does love me, but that the spark is gone. But she wants it to return. But in the meantime, she can't be around me. How do I cope with her aggression and defensiveness without losing myself? How do I show her that I'm not the man that I became? How do I make her understand that the burden of not being good enough, or my wife wouldn't have preferred death, was slowly eroding me? Update. So we had our first couples therapy a few hours ago, and it was an eye-opener. Yes, she is depressed and has severe issues. And no, that does not excuse her behavior. She told the two therapists and me bluntly that she lied to me when she had sex with me the past few weeks. She told me repeatedly that she would never be intimate against her will. But during that session, she told us that she felt obliged to do it because of her mistake. Hearing that she lied about something as primal as this, even though I asked her and never forced her, angered me tremendously. Yes, she feels shame, but not guilt. It's all focused on her own pain and sorrow. And the fact that everyone who knows about this judges her, the other parents at school, her parents, mine, and our friends. The shame triggers her depression, and in turn, that triggers her anger. She's just spouting her own rationale for having an affair, a story that she's practiced for over a year in her own mind, and usually in an angry state of mind. And that's something that should and will stop. During the session, she was confronted several times by the therapists on why she was so angry, on why her pain and regret focused on the literally small things that were wrong in our marriage, instead of the things she did wrong in the same marriage. I'll wait until the next session before confronting her with anger at her total lack of respect for me and our kids, because I reckon that things like that can be best discussed with a therapist in the room and not one-on-one. If I confront her myself, I'll only cause her to dig herself in and lock the doors. If there's a neutral party present, she won't have that chance. Yes, I still think there's a chance that we can save this. And that's still what I want. But there has to be respect from both sides. I'm not someone to pick a fight with the mother of my children, the woman I still love, but she has to understand that if she walks, it's the end. She does not get to decide if we remain friends. She does not get to decide if and how I heal myself. If she walks out of this, she loses me. I'll remain civil for the kids, take care of the finances, and scrub her out of my life. There will be no bond between us, and I'll use every part of my energy to rebuild my life and be there for the kids. She doesn't get to decide if she'll be a factor in it. Ida. Opie, I'm really sorry about what you're going through. For the past 6 years, you've exhausted yourself trying to fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed and isn't responding to your efforts at all. You are bearing all the emotional weight of your relationship. I know that she has depression and clearly has some deep mental health issues. But depression doesn't cause someone to treat their partner badly or cheat on them. Every single act of disrespect and unkindness is a choice that she makes. If staying is what you want, at least take care and look after yourself more. Get in tune with how much this whole thing is affecting you and be a better version of yourself. So, if she finally decided to move on regardless, you would know you've tried your very best. I wish you all the best with your situation, Opie. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on today's stories. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today's story is going to blow your mind. My wife, 34, and I, 32, have been together for 8 years. When she told me about the business trip she was planning on taking, I thought it was a little odd because she worked as a bank teller. But she actually showed me a company email she got, explaining that all employees were to receive paid training over the course of one weekend in Tennessee. What she forgot to do, though, was turn off location share on her phone, which led me to discover that she was actually at a bar. So you can imagine how surprised I was to see her at the bar, sitting with another man. I watched them drink a lot over the course of 3 hours from the opposite side of the restaurant. I told my closest friend that I saw my wife was there, even though she was supposed to be on a business trip. He was shocked and asked me what I was going to do. I decided to start filming. I was super upset when I caught a kiss on video. My friend tried to console me, but nothing was going to help at that moment. Eventually, they left, and I followed them at a distance. My wife got in the driver's seat of the man's car, leaving hers at the bar. I didn't like this at all. It was super unsettling. As I watched her drive, she had trouble staying on the road. I decided to call the cops on her and gave them the license plate of the man's car. I followed them from a distance of about half a mile on the highway before a cop found them. She was swerving pretty badly, even more than when I called them. I then saw her get pulled over before going around them. I was so pleased. With what I knew at this point, my wife had some consequences due. I then drove off to a secluded area and sat there thinking about what happened until I got a phone call. It was my wife, calling from the police station. She asked me to bear with her while she told me one hell of a story. She said her business trip was canceled, so she went to the bar with her friends before coming home. She said her car was left at the bar because her friend was driving her home. That's when she stopped, realizing she made a mistake in her story. She was being charged with a DUI and needed me to bail her out, but she just accidentally told me her friend was driving her home. If that was the case, she wouldn't be charged with a DUI. Besides that, she probably knew I was going to ask where her friend was. In her absolute frustration, she hung up on me. I didn't even get a chance to ask her anything. I found out later that she called her dad before calling me back. Apparently, she got lots of phone calls from jail. The only reason she called me back was because her dad refused to bail her out. She said she had to tell me the truth, but hoped I would hear her out and be understanding. She said she was driving her friend home when she got pulled over and arrested for a DUI. After my initial freak out over the news, I asked her who her friend was and how she planned to get home if her friend was too drunk to drive. She said she was going to spend time there, maybe sleep over while she sobered up. Okay, but who was her friend? She only gave me the name of Sarah. She said she didn't know her last name. How silly. I warned her that if I was going to bail her out, I was going to ask the police who she was with when she was arrested. This stunned her, and she probably wondered if the police would tell me that information. At this point, she was in a corner, so she agreed and begged me to come get her. I said I would but didn't. I called her company to speak with her boss. I asked if they canceled an employee training seminar scheduled for this weekend in Tennessee, but she had no idea what I was talking about. I thanked her for her time, but before I got off the phone, I let her know that my wife was being charged with a DUI and served divorce papers, so she probably wouldn't be into work for a while. She would have a lot to explain to her boss and coworkers if she wasn't fired. I couldn't bail her out. I had to let her pay the price for her foolishness. She lied to my face and created a fake company email to show me. I never would have known she was with another man if I didn't go to the same bar by chance. I had a video of them kissing, and along with her arrest, it was the perfect time to file for divorce. When she was pulled over, she was in his car and driving toward his home. She must have planned to spend the whole weekend with him since that's what she fabricated the lie for. That proves to me that she was going to sleep with him repeatedly, or already has. She was absolutely broken when she was released. She tried to rekindle the relationship with the man in question, but he wasn't interested anymore. Pretty pathetic if you ask me. She gave up our 8-year-long relationship for someone who didn't want her after 3 months. Sometimes I wish this was all a bad dream and she really did go on a business trip. She's actually told me on a voicemail that she wishes the same thing. Meanwhile, I'm still happy she got a DUI and caught in the epic way she was. I can't imagine what would have happened if I never found her that night. I might have avoided raising a bastard child. For that reason alone, I am grateful. Opie, I am sorry you had to experience the shock and betrayal of finding your wife at a bar with another man. You thought you could trust her, and she was where she said she was. That proved to be false, which leads me to believe you made the right decision to divorce. It would have only been a matter of time before she tried to sneak away again. She didn't seem remorseful beyond the fact that she was caught. When someone goes as far as forging evidence to prove their lie is trustworthy, that is a red flag. I have hope for you, Opie. You seem like a strong and wise individual who won't have much of a problem moving on from this. You were very clever to call the police on her for drunk driving. Not only was she disrespecting you and cheating, she was putting other people's lives at risk. I hope she's learned her lesson, and I wish nothing but the very best going forward. Now, let's get into today's second story. I'm about to tell you one messed up story that I can't believe happened to me. First, let's start off with some background information. I had a really big family with lots of siblings, uncles, aunts, cousins, and spouses and offspring of those relatives. We had lots of family gatherings and big dinners. Ever since we started dating, I would bring Laylee, my girlfriend then wife, to lots of social family events. I was 34 and Laylee, my future wife, was 31 when I proposed. In my parents' opinion, I made them wait a very long time for this to happen. So, when we got engaged, they hosted a really big engagement party with all my relatives in attendance. Laylee didn't have any family. At first, it was hard for me to believe, but she really didn't have any family. She had foster parents that moved away as soon as she turned 18 and started living on her own. Before I proposed, I warned Laylee that I could not have children of my own. I became a cancer survivor by the age of 14, and infertility was one of the consequences from that. She told me she didn't mind and we would adopt if we ever wished to have children. The engagement party was a huge success. It was a wonderful night for both of us, surrounded by friends and my, now supposedly our, family. I was so relieved to have found the woman I wanted to spend my life with. 1 month after our engagement party, I got the greatest surprise of my life. Laylee told me she was pregnant. I was ecstatic. I didn't know how it was possible. I only accepted it as a miracle. I called my parents and told them right away. I had to move the phone away from my ear because of their excited screams. It came as no surprise when my parents couldn't contain their excitement anymore and sent out invites to a baby shower. When we looked at the invites my mom designed, my fiancé looked disheartened. She blamed it on pregnancy hormones, but I could have sworn she felt shame or embarrassment. I couldn't imagine why, and I tried to ask if this was the case, but she assured me she was fine. During the party, I was on cloud nine. I was practically high on life and becoming a father, so I didn't realize my fiancé was gone for a bit. My younger brother pulled me aside and told me I needed to see my fiancé. I was immediately concerned. We went upstairs and stopped just outside the spare bedroom door. I could hear her crying and softly speaking to someone. Another man. This man, I quickly realized, sounded exactly like my older brother. I looked at my younger brother, Tommy, with my jaw dropped as I listened, completely stunned. His expression seemed to acknowledge that he knew the man in the bedroom with my fiancé was our oldest brother, Louis. Louis was furious. He was calling Lily names, telling her that she should have taken Plan B or had an abortion instead of telling me she was pregnant. He said they were in one hell of a mess because of her stupidity. He offered the reasoning that since they couldn't tell anyone the baby was his, maybe she could fall down the stairs or do something to Miss Gary. Lily was the first one to come out, and we stared at each other. Louis came out shortly after, hopefully not planning to push Lily down the stairs, and froze when he saw us. I was having an out-of-body experience when I attacked my brother. I don't remember the moments I was beating him, but I do remember when 5 of my family members pulled me off of him. That's when I realized there was lots of yelling and crying. Lots of questions and accusations. I looked Lily in the eyes through all the people crowding the hallway when I announced that the wedding was off. I stumbled down the stairs, so Tommy came to my side and drove me to his apartment. Apparently, the mass chaos took a while to simmer down after I left. Since I discovered them and the secret was out, Louis announced that he was the father of Lily's child. Everyone gasped. Some people cried. Many of my cousins started yelling at Louis, getting in his face and calling him out for being so self-centered and inconsiderate. Louis didn't feel remorse for what he'd done, only that he was caught. In his mind, this was Lily's problem because she didn't take care of it. Since he found all of the family criticism less than desirable, he left. He found a woman to stay with in the next stayover. While I grieved, my family members took turns staying with me at my house or having me stay with them at their house. My dream of getting married and having a child was gone just as quickly as it appeared. But in that short amount of time, I had invested so much hope and energy. I felt drained and discouraged, but apparently, this was nothing compared to what Lily was going through. Immediately after the hellish baby shower, she found herself homeless. Without me or my family's support, she was alone. After spending a few days on the streets, she managed to find a room to stay in with a roommate. She continuously messaged me, even though I would rarely reply. I was in recovery mode. It felt like I was in shock for a while after this, because I was also coping with the betrayal of my brother. She would ask me to spend time with her because of how badly she wanted companionship, especially as she neared the due date of the baby without any plan or way to support it. I told her no. She needed to handle herself because this was the consequence of her choice. If she needed to, of course, she could put the child up for adoption, but that was not my concern. Wow, Opie. Your story just goes to show that cheating never happens without consequences for those involved. Even though your fiancé tried to hide the fact that you were not the father, the truth came out. It's shocking that she would cheat on you with your brother, and that your brother would also go behind your back. That's devastating news. It is a relief to hear that, even though you had to go through this level of betrayal, you had lots of family support. I am so glad you discovered the truth. You basically have an opportunity to get your life back. I wish you the best going forward. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened.